Hi everyone, welcome to our Preno webinar for today, which is Unlocking the Power of Dynamic Pricing. My name is Marie. I'm sure I've spoken to some of you at some point in time. So good to see you today. And I'm here as Preno's revenue management expert, and I'm going to talk you through our dynamic pricing feature. Now, we're just going to wait for a few minutes for everyone else to join us. But in the meantime, I'm just going to point you to the questions section and the chat section. If you do have any questions at all during the webinar, please feel free to jump in and send us your questions. And also at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A and we'll jump back there to go through that. Okay. So we'll just wait a few more minutes and we'll jump right in. Now, I think we'll jump into it. So, now, what we'll be going through today, obviously we're going to introduce you to dynamic pricing, and then we'll move on to how the tools work. We'll go through some examples of our actual customers who have set the dynamic pricing up and their success stories. I'll go through a live demo as well of how to set the dynamic pricing up in Preno, and we'll touch on best practices for how to set this up, and also link you through to some of the resources that we have, and then we'll jump into our Q&A session. Okay. Now, first off, what is dynamic pricing? I think for a lot of you, you would have heard of this term at some point in time. Essentially, what it is increasing your price according to your market conditions and demand, right? So this allows you to essentially improve your occupancy and also to maximize your revenue. Okay, so that you're charging higher rates when you can, when there's a higher demand, but also offering competitive rates when demand is not so great. Okay, and you'll notice, so this approach ensures that your pricing is always optimized, so you get the best value for each booking. Okay. Now, how does a dynamic pricing strategy benefits hotel owners? So essentially what it's doing is it's adjusting your price so that it's making you more competitive, be it increasing it so that you get a higher revenue when it's really busy and there's a lot of demand, or alternatively reducing the rates so that it makes you more competitive when demand is low. Okay. So by doing that, you're improving your occupancy rates and you're also staying competitive. And most importantly, these are real-time adjustments. So as your inventory is changing, as the days are changing, your rates are adjusting accordingly. Okay. Now, we'll move on to Preno's dynamic pricing tools. So with Preno's dynamic pricing tools, we have two features in place. So the first one is the surge pricing tool. So the surge pricing tool is designed to increase your revenue as the demand increases. Okay, so it will continually check your inventory. So as it decreases, your rates will increase. Okay, the good thing about this is it will just run continuously for up to 720 days in advance. So you're not having to worry about if an event is suddenly announced, in 3 months' time or even 6 months' time, having to jump in quickly to adjust your rates. If Preno notices that your inventory is starting to decrease, it will automatically push your price up. In that way, improving and increasing your revenue over those states where there is a high demand. Okay. Now, the other tool that we have is our last minute pricing tool. Now, this works in opposite, essentially, from the surge pricing tool. What it does is it's looking at reducing your rates to try and improve your occupancy for the rooms that would essentially usually be sitting empty, right? So ideally, we don't want rooms to be sitting empty. So hopefully by reducing the price as you come closer to check-in date, we're hoping that you get to pick up these last-minute bookings and improving your occupancy, okay? Now, for Preno, our last minute pricing tool has a range of up to 30 days. So essentially anywhere up to 30 days from check-in day, you can set a rule to trigger the last minute pricing tool to reduce your rates. Okay. Now, this is something that's coming later on, but the next feature that we're looking to roll out for Preno is our competitor pricing tool. Now, the advantage of this is not only are you assessing your own property, we're also going to look at taking into account any adjustments for competitor properties in the area. So that way you're not overpricing yourself so that it's too high compared to your other properties in the area, and also vice versa, not dropping your rates too low compared to other people in the area. Okay, but this is coming soon, so keep your eyes out for that. Now let's move on to success stories. So what have our customers seen by setting up the dynamic pricing tools that we have in place? I think the numbers speak for themselves in that they're making lots of money, which is great news. But a few things that I wanted to point out. Firstly, is that even though the total value in terms of actual increase in revenue is quite significant, when you actually look at the breakdown for a lot of our properties, the average increase is sort of between anywhere from $2 up to $20 max per night. So it's not an extremely high increase. Just from very, very minor tweaks in their rates, they have seen quite a significant change in their revenue. Okay, so if you're worried about pricing yourself too high and throwing guests off from booking, this is just a reassurance that you don't have to worry about that, because this is not about increasing your rates by $100 a night. It totally is not that. It's just making very minor adjustments to improve your revenue. Okay. The other thing I like to point out as well is the number of adjustments that are made. So taking this into account, if you were to do this manually, it's going to take a lot of time from your day, having to do this every day. And this is all done automatically. All you have to do is set up some rules, and Preno does its thing on the background. So it does take a lot of that time away from you having to do this manually. It will just tick along once you've set it up. Okay. The other thing I wanted to point out is the number of units, and also the location of these properties. You'll see that we've got a variety of different properties all located all over the world. You'll also notice that the size of the properties has not impacted I guess how much revenue they've earned. It has made an impact regardless of the size of the property, regardless of the location. All these properties have seen a significant increase in their revenue. Okay, cool. Those examples are also on our website, so you can jump in there and have a look in a bit more detail. And we've got some customer success stories as well on our website, but we'll link that later on. So now I'm going to jump on to do a live demo for you on how to set up your dynamic pricing. So I'm going to take you through my demo account and how to set this up. Okay, so in your account, if you jump into your rates tab, and then we're going to click on this go to dynamic pricing. Now, first thing we're going to do is look at setting up your surge pricing. All you have to do is create a new rule. Okay, and what you want to do is basically set the number of rooms where you want to start increasing the rate. So for example, if I want to increase the rates for my 1-bedroom unit, okay, so I can click that I only want it to apply for the 3-night rate for the increase, and I have 8 rooms. So I could decide to go, right, if I want at 6 rooms, I want to increase my daily rate by $5. And then when it drops down to 4 rooms, I want to increase it by another $5. Okay. So you can set up to 5 triggers. Okay. And you can also increase by percentage. So up to you what works best for you. Percentage may work better if you are combining different room types. Okay. So if, say, I was combining my 1-bedroom unit and also my 2-bedroom unit, so they have different base rates. So I might not want to increase by $5, might want to increase by percentage and go, right, let's do a 3% increase on both. Now, in terms of deciding when you want to trigger and how much to increase, what we suggest is to look at your occupancy rate, or your occupancy rate best, right? And I'll go through the details a bit more after this, but essentially you want to work out your occupancy for when you want to be increasing your rates, and also in terms of how much, again, based on what you're comfortable, but our guide is anywhere sort of between 15 to 20%. Okay. Now, once you've done that, you've got your triggers set up, okay, and you've ticked which ones you want to apply the rule to. So if you're selecting multiple room types, you can also combine the room types. Okay, so essentially now I'm working with a combined inventory of 12 rooms. Okay, so, and then you put a name on it, review the rule, and create the rule. Okay, so your rule is essentially set up. Now there's one additional step for the surge pricing, which is run the rule. So when you click run the rule, it will go ahead and go through all your inventory over the next 720 days. And if any of the dates meet these triggers, it's going to trigger your dynamic pricing, but only if you click the run rule. Okay, otherwise it doesn't trigger until a new booking comes through. All right. Now, on to the last minute pricing. So same thing again, we're going to create a new rule. And let's say I'm going to do it for my 1-bedroom unit again. And the rule I want to set up is to say, if I have 3 or more rooms remaining, 15 days before check-in, I want to reduce my rate by $10, for example. Okay, so same thing, I can do that. I can set up about 5 rules. Okay. And the good thing about the last minute pricing is you also have this additional sort of safety measure. Okay. So my 1-bedroom unit, say the base rate is $100. I'm happy to go lowest 90, nothing less than that. Okay. So what this means is if the rules set up actually bring the rates down to below 90, it will cap it at 90. So at least you know you have the assurance, right? I don't want it to go anything lower than this rate. You know it's not going to. So regardless of what you set up here, it will cap at whatever the lowest rate you have set for the room type, okay, as a safety measure. All right, so you name it, and then we can set it up. Okay, and there you go. So with the last minute pricing, this runs every day at midnight. It's going to check, right, this rule is 15 days from today, and it's going to reduce the rate accordingly. Okay, so once a rule is set up, you can pause the rule and resume the rule as and when you please. All right, so if I pause it, I'll say it's paused and it stopped running. Okay, if you want to turn it back on, just click it into it and resume again. Okay, cool. Now, once you've set up your dynamic pricing rules, if you receive a booking at a higher rate or at the dynamic pricing rates, we will start tracking it here. If there are no bookings that have been received at the dynamic pricing rates, then it will remain 0. But once it comes through, it will start tracking it. Okay. I don't have any. Oh, here you go. So how you can tell dynamic pricing has been applied over a given date is this little purple triangle here. So this tells me that this rate has actually been increased. You can also click on it to show the history. Okay, where dynamic pricing has increased the rate. All right. Okay, now that's the live demo. Now we will be happy to help you guys out with setting up your dynamic pricing if you do need any help. Okay, but right now I'll go through some of the tips for creating effective dynamic pricing rules. So as I mentioned before, you want to look at your occupancy rate, so you know this best. So looking at how high is my occupancy in general. So one thing to note, if your occupancy is high, you can obviously increase it, increase your rates. But if it's low, you want to just adjust it accordingly and factor in how high can you go, right? Looking also at any events that are happening, any holidays, and making sure you adjust your rates accordingly, and also to review your dynamic pricing on a regular basis. So yes, it is automated and it will do its thing, but always check in to see if it's working and to make adjustments. You know, you may be able to make more money, or alternatively, it may not be working as well as you like, and tweaking it to see what works best for your property. Okay. Now, specifically for surge pricing, some things to note. You want to group room types with similar occupancy levels if you want to make it a little bit easier, a little bit tidier, if you're not wanting to set up a rule for each room type. Okay, you can group them together if they have similar occupancy levels. Another reason why you'd be grouping room types, if you have less than 3 rooms per room type, then definitely look at grouping them together, as you tend to see better results that way. Okay. Now, occupancy rates. If your occupancy rates is less than 70%, you want to focus on adjusting your surge pricing or having it applied to the first half of your rooms. So the example here is if you say have 10 rooms and your occupancy is 50%, you want the surge pricing to kick in for the first 5 rooms, right? So that means I might apply a rule when there are 8 rooms remaining and then 6 rooms remaining, and I probably won't increase anymore after that. All right. Now, if you've got high occupancy rates over 70%, then it really doesn't matter. You can, up to you. You kind of have a little bit more free reign as to when you want to apply surge pricing. Okay. Now, in terms of how much to increase, as I've mentioned before, the range you want to look at is about 15 to 20%. Anything higher than that, I'd say you'd have to be very cautious about whether it would suit your property. I think if it was a luxury property, then yes, you may be okay with doing a higher percentage increase, but otherwise, yeah, be very mindful of going above 20% in total. Okay. Now, last minute pricing, some things to think about when you're setting this up and how to make it work best for you. Firstly, is obviously checking your lead time, right? What is the average lead time for your bookings? Okay. So if your average lead time is, say, 20 days, you want to start reducing your rates, anything less than 20 days. So usually if it's 20 days, I'd say 10 days before check-in, you'd start reducing your rates, right? But it is that balance as well of making sure that you don't wait too close to a check-in date before you have your last minute pricing kick in. Because ideally we want to capture those last minute bookings, but not too late that people are no longer looking as well. Okay. Now, if you're worried about dropping the rates sort of too soon, what you can do is start with smaller increments, smaller reductions, and then leading up to closer to check-in time, you drop the rates even more. Okay. Now, Preno has quite a number of resources available for you to tap into with regards to dynamic pricing. So we've got setup guides outlined in our help center. So going through basically what I went through in the live demo in terms of how to set it up and where to find all the buttons that you need. We also have video tutorials that basically go through the same thing as well. And lastly, of course, you've got the customer support team that you can reach out if you need a hand with setting things up, okay? And we'll share the links in the chat box at the end. Okay, so that is essentially our webinar for today. I hope, I was able to cover any questions that you had about dynamic pricing, but we will jump into a Q&A session, and I will do this in the chat box below, so I won't be doing this live here in person, but I'll just be talking to you through the chat box, okay? I'll also have some other team members join us so that we can jump in and go through your questions, okay?